Unitarian Universalist Church of Amherst. I'm Angela Warren, the Director of Faith Development, and I'm joining Reverend Michelle to offer a worship service that lifts up and celebrates the work of faith development across the lifespan, particularly as it relates to this church year. You will be amazed and inspired by the fun we've had, the work we've done, and the intimacy that has been created in this year apart. We are so glad you have chosen to join us in worship. As we gather, we acknowledge that our church is built on occupied land that once belonged to the First Nations people of this region, the Haudenosaunee. Today, I would like to also extend gratitude to all of the water protectors in Minnesota, where over 200 people have been arrested for protesting the continuation of the Line 3 pipeline through the state. In the words of Joe Hill, a Turtle Clan Senecal from the Cattaraugus Reservation, who has been protesting there since December, "This pipeline isn't just about this place, or the Anishinaabe, or the wild rice," Hill said. "It's about the world and what will happen if we don't shut the tar sands down." We say, Nyahweh, thank you in the Seneca language to Mr. Hill, to those arrested in the name of climate justice, to the Ojibwe Anishinaabe people, to Winona LaDuke of Water Protectors and Honor the Earth, to Resilient Indigenous Sisters Engaging, or RISE, to Jane Fonda with Greenpeace, who has been using her celebrity for environmental justice for decades, and to all the organizations and individuals who are putting their bodies on the line for the healthy continuation of life on the beautiful blue boat we call Earth.
We begin our worship together by lighting the flaming chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, that embodies the light of reason and the search for truth and meaning, the warmth of friendship and community, and the fire of our commitment to bring more justice and compassion to a hurting world. If you have a chalice or a simple candle at home, please prepare to light it as we light our shared chalice. We light this chalice in deep respect for the mystery and holiness of life, with honor and gratitude for those who came before, with compassion and love for those who dwell among us, and with hope and faith for generations yet to come. It has long been the custom in this congregation and others to take a Sunday morning at the end of the academic year and demonstrate what the children and youth have been learning. I think this came out of the practice of sending our children out partway through the worship service, if they participated at all. Where did they go? And what did they do? As a faith tradition, it seems we turned the adage of children should be seen and not heard upside down, as we hoped their teachers were encouraging their free speech and critical thinking, but that it was accomplished somewhere else, out of sight. This was attributed to what I think was a misguided effort not to bore our children with lengthy sermons, forgetting that adults get bored too when the sermons are too long, or preferring intellectual content to lifting spirits. So we split the congregation and raised a generation who never really learned how to be part of a multi-generational worshiping community. Less than 10% of young people raised in Unitarian Universalism will remain affiliated to and active in a congregation, and we wonder why our numbers remain small. The model for religious education came out of the 18th and 19th century Protestant Sunday school model, which took on the responsibility of literally educating children, simultaneously conveying biblical stories and teaching children how to read. In a society where church and state had fuzzy boundaries, this also functioned to create citizens with a common core of religious knowledge and biblical literacy. No footnotes were needed if someone made reference to a David and Goliath situation. Everybody knew what that meant. As children's educational needs have been increasingly met by public education, extracurricular activities, and more recently through educational games played on computers, the church's role as educator has diminished, although denominational curricula have not always reflected this shift. We have continued to send our children and youth to age-segregated classrooms, but with a bit less direction as to what to do when they got there. If you were a UU youth in the 60s and 70s, your Sunday morning experience might have looked more like electives in a college humanities program, with art, photography, poetry. In the 80s and 90s, the emphasis was on identifying the 7 principles as they connect to the colors of the rainbow. And of course, if you were a teenager, Sunday morning was a time to hang out with friends in youth group. In the last 2 decades, there has been a shift to developmentally driven programs, but the practice of sending our kids away and making worship an adults-only space, unless the children are entertaining us with a Christmas pageant or end-of-year show and tell, continues. I am mystified by this behavior. We know that if we want children to learn how to behave in formal settings like the concert hall, theater, or a fancy restaurant, we have to actually take them there and nurture them into full participation. Shouldn't we do that with church? 6 years ago, we made the switch from religious education to faith development. Although you wouldn't know it, since old habits and language of RE are tenacious, it was more than a change of vocabulary. It became a guiding principle, a leap of faith that indicated our willingness to evolve into more than programming for children and families. Unitarian Universalist religious educators had made a bold statement. Faith development is all we as churches do. Unitarian Universalism is the faith we teach. The congregation is the curriculum. Faith development is all we do. Every song we sing, every sermon, every covenant group or team meeting, it's all faith development. It's all learning, embracing, and embodying the principles that guide our faith. It's all dipping our cup into the deep well that our sources represent. Faith development is all we do. Unitarian Universalism is the faith we teach. After decades of offering classes on every conceivable religion or spiritual practice, we are finally figuring out that Unitarian Universalism is not a waiting room where you decide what religion you will choose. It's an alternative religion, not an alternative to religion. Unitarian Universalism is the faith we teach. The congregation is the curriculum. Ours is a covenantal faith, based in sacred promises and aspirational principles. All of our interactions, whether in joined worship or sitting in a Zoom meeting to create a budget, are opportunities for us to live our values and support one another in becoming the loving, responsible members of the earth family that we are meant to be. More than paper curricula steeped in liberal theology, we grow and learn through our shared living. The congregation is the curriculum. Let me share with you a reading from one of my journals. It's entitled, What If? By Ganga White. What if our religion was each other? If our practice was our life? If prayer was our words? What if the temple was the earth? If forests were our church? If holy water the rivers, lakes, and oceans? What if meditation was our relationships? If the teacher was life? If wisdom was self-knowledge? If love was the center of our being? Indeed, what if? I believe we are moving to this kind of religion, and we are doing so with great intention, as we realize that the interdependent web that we respect and talk about is not just out there, but is in here, within and among us. During the pandemic separation, we have begun realizing our desire to become a more truly multi-generational congregation. Folks of all ages have been engaging in craft projects, learn and work sessions on our church grounds, and reaching out to one another with cards and phone or Zoom calls. Early on, Angela and I, realizing that our energy and resources were finite, began to lean into multi-generational offerings with everything for everyone. It must be sticking, because recently some folks have begun to use the language of lifespan faith development without Angela or myself beating that drum. That's evolution of the very best kind. Faith development is evolving, undergoing a fundamental shift in meaning and methodology. Perhaps a little refresher about the nature of our universe and the beauty of evolution will be
Today's story
useful
starts at
right
the
about
beginning,
now.
the very beginning of everything. Before people existed, before trees and animals existed, even before our planet, the sun and the Milky Way galaxy existed, even before the universe was born, everything rested in the heart of the great mystery, a mystery filled with dark nothingness, with creative energy, which is very dense and supercharged. Energy that folded on itself into a speck of matter, perhaps no bigger than a seed. It was full of so much energy that it couldn't hold back any longer and made a blinding flash and began exploding wildly about. A big bang! It was unbelievably hot, like nothing else we ever knew. Just within minutes, it expanded and cooled only immensely hot and created something new, something that would never die. Hydrogen! It also made helium, which is like two hydrogens stuck together. These gases are invisible. They're actually part of the air we breathe today. Hydrogen and helium floated around in the darkness, all by themselves for a very long time, for over 300 million years. The universe kept growing bigger and bigger and cooler and colder. There was something else in the darkness, too. It was gravity. Gravity was a force that pulled things together. Eventually, these clumps grew together and they grew so large that gravity squeezed the two gases together and made gravity squeeze the giant ball of gas so tightly that two hydrogens fused together to make helium and released a little bit of heat and light. Then another, then another. Eventually, this giant ball of glass started to do something beautiful. It started to glow. And the very first stars that ever existed in the whole universe was born. Depending on the size of the star, it can take millions to billions of years for the star to use all its hydrogen gas. Meanwhile, it glows with heat and light. After the hydrogen was gone, the star puffed up really big, cooled, and glowed red. We call this a red giant. But inside, it got so hot, burning and glowing helium, it started to do something special. It started to change into other things like carbon, calcium, and iron. It was very special. That also meant soon that star would die. Some of the stars cool and fade away, but a few explode into a beautiful verse that glows hundreds of stars and spreads all the elements on the universe. We called this stardust. So now, there were stars and stardust floating around in space, and guess what happened next? Gravity started to pull the stardust together, squeezing them into clumps. It started to recycle the stardust into new things. Some stardust made new stars. Some of the stardust turned into moons, comets, rocky asteroids, and planets. Actually, everything in the universe is made of recycled stardust. And hydrogen was made in the first few minutes of the universe. These rocks, this carpet, this building, so are you! Every ingredient of the human body is made from elements by dying stars. I wonder if you have heard or seen any of this before. Tell us in the comments. Bye!
Thank you, Emma and Grayson. My, how they've grown since that was recorded. I wonder how much more since we've last seen them, so many months ago. I don't wonder only about how they've gotten taller and outgrown their shoe size. I wonder what they have learned, how they've evolved within. How is evolution different than growth? This insight from Wikidiff. As nouns, the difference between growth and evolution is that growth is an increase in size, number, value, or strength, while evolution is gradual directional change, especially one leading to a more advanced or complex form. In our human life, we grow from conception to birth to toddlerhood, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and elderhood. Then as adults, our physicalness continues to change, but we are humans the whole time. As our young storyteller shares, every ingredient in the human body is made from elements from dying stars. From stardust to human being, we have evolved. Even if you don't take the story of the Big Bang literally, or the creation myth of the Bible literally, science really has concluded that we are ultimately evolved from stardust. That the energy that constituted the Big Bang eventually evolved into the complexities that are us, trees, bees, and bears, and everything else on Earth. Stardust was the beginning, and then, as younger Emma tells us, everything rested in the heart of the great mystery. We lit our chalice this morning in the spirit of the deep respect for the mystery and holiness of life. Why is life such a mystery? Seems to me that everything changes so much that we can never really figure it all out. Why do we want to? Do we always have to draw conclusions at the end of something? The church year, the pandemic, our lives? Or may we rest in this respect for life's complexities, this mystery? This brings to mind a quote that may sound familiar from Octavia Butler, science fiction author of the Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. It was challenging to think about how to present Faith Development Sunday this year. As I wrote for the annual report, I thought, here it is. It's the list of what we did and what we did not, what we could do and what was literally impossible, especially for parents with children and for those who weren't able to use the technology to stay in touch. Believe me, I empathize. Right now, over the past month or so since spring has emerged, every opportunity I have to say no to an online program, that's what I do. Seems so long being on the computer that right now, in this moment, it's time for doing, and I've been planting and picking at every opportunity. After submitting the pieces of the annual report, especially the faith development piece, I thought to myself, what would the annual report that I really, really wanted to write look like? Reverend Michelle said once over the past week or so, as we were all submitting our various laundry lists, why can't it just be pictures? Wow. Yeah, why can't it just be pictures? Well, last year it was almost impossible to get pictures, but we did catch quite a few of you in your craftiness as we created together the best we could. The report I really, really want to write or show would look like us, like all of us, not just the people who grew closer together through the dramatic pause of pandemic, but all of us, all of you watching this at 10:30 a.m. on Sunday, June 13th, 2021, prior to participating in the Unitarian Universalist Church of Amherst annual meeting, either in person or via Zoom. Anyone who is watching this at a different time, and those of you who won't ever hear this reflection because you just haven't really been engaged in church life since the pandemic. Maybe you will hear the call to action from those who have been paying attention all along. Maybe you're just joining us. You're invited to be in the next year's photo album too. This annual report would show this entire community engaged in a way that honors the evolution that it is going through. It would be all of us, together, sharing our values, our time, talent, and treasure for longer than the annual meeting or the annual picnic. Next year, I want to report that we were gentle with one another as we regathered. We all showed up to services, to programs, and to leadership, even if it was in the smallest way, like writing thank yous to businesses that have stood up for LGBTQ rights, as Reverend Michelle suggested last week. Maybe you show up by gathering a donation for any of the organizations who support the water protectors. Maybe you show up by being one small voice for our core values of compassion and justice by getting out the vote through our local Stand Up Western New York or another organization, flexing the muscles of our democracy. Do these things in the name of your church. Take a church friend with you. Let us know the good work you are doing in the name of this church. Just 2 short years ago, we began to shift the congregation to policy governance and to begin work with our Committee on Mission, the body that acts as the liaison between governance and ministry and ensures that our various ministry teams align with our mission. This committee, after figuring out who they were and the role they were charged with, came to the faith development team. Ultimately, our work together in refining our FD mission statement and defining goals for the next church year centers our core values that come from our church mission to challenge ourselves and the community to foster more compassion and justice in the world. Hence the evolution of our faith development mission statement from the former. To develop and lead educational programs for all ages that foster the values of compassion and justice in our community and beyond. 2, to develop and promote opportunities for all ages that lead towards spiritual wholeness while creating an inclusive, beloved community both within and beyond our congregation. This change from lead educational programs for all ages to promote opportunities for all ages speaks to the shift in religious education overall in Unitarian Universalism that Reverend Michelle just told us about. Then, we've added 2 action pieces. First, to lead towards spiritual wholeness, and then to create an inclusive, beloved community. These changes are kin to the actions of the proposed eighth principle that many congregations have adopted. This is the eighth principle. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. Not only are we the love people, but this love we share and promote requires taking action. This gradual directional change, this evolution towards more action, is a tenet for our faith, and yes, it does need to be spoken. This is missional change and focused, purposeful evolution of our souls, and of the soul of this congregation to not only be welcoming, but to be radically inclusive. My hope is that our mission will continually evolve to include justice and compassion for all members of the Earth family. Last week for Pride Sunday, we heard about being a welcoming congregation. What's the difference between welcoming and inclusion? This question was posed to a number of Quaker leaders, and the responses were shared on our Facebook page this week. First, this comment from our own Lorraine Marcus. If welcoming requires work, just imagine the amount of work being inclusive requires. Both are ongoing practices facilitating personal growth, deep listening facilitating, and a sense of belonging. And Lisa Graustein from the Three Rivers meeting and one of the facilitators for last summer's program, Radical Acting in Faith for White People, brings this back to the kids. Are we acting as if our young people are fully a part of our body? Or these kids who are kind of there some of the time? This, my friends, this is why we need all of us acting in small, big, any way at all that aligns with our mission. Because to include means to include all of the time, not just some of the time. We need to practice this radical inclusion, to include all of us, all of the time. All genders, all colors, all shapes, all capacities, all ages are welcome here in this place. This whole community can reflect on our Spirit Play class behavior prompts. This is how we will behave. We will be gentle and kind. We will listen. We will be calm, show respect, think it over, try again, focus, and finish. Our faith, our belief in our principles and sources, and in our relationships to one another is a journey of faith development that evolves over our entire lifespan. Last year's curriculum for both adults and youth raised awareness within our community of the intersection of all the justices. And we have seen this intersection come more and more into the mainstream of consciousness. The evolution of civil rights is continuing to bend toward the arc of justice, bringing to light the truths that environmental and racial justice are intrinsically connected. I have had the honor and privilege of witnessing this revelation within many of you, even as it has evolved within myself. This realization of complexity, this honoring of this country's true history, and the longing to bring it into full light. If you haven't allowed your soul to open to these truths, never fear. There will be more excellent opportunities to do so this coming year as we intentionally widen the circle of concern and inclusion. The first reflection I ever offered to this congregation in 2013 through our Preaching by Parishioners program contained this quote from T.H. White, from the Once and Future King. "The best thing for being sad," replied Merlin, "is to learn something. That's the only thing that never fails. You may grow old and trembling in your anatomies. You may lie awake at night listening to the disorder of your veins. You may miss your only love. You may see the world about you devastated by evil lunatics, or know your honor trampled in the sewers of baser minds. There is only one thing for it then, to learn. Learn why the world wags and what wags it. That is the only thing which the mind can never exhaust, never alienate, never be tortured by, never fear or distrust, and never dream of regretting. Learning is the only thing for you. Look at what a lot of things there are to learn. UU Amherst Faith Development Programs will continue to foster learning, compassion, and justice for all. The expansion of this learning and practice will be dependent on all of our interactions and participation. All of the little pieces that create wholeness in ourselves, our children, and our world need to emerge and be seen. Take pictures. Share them with us. Tell your stories. Come here to this place, and we will listen to one another. We will try again. We can focus, finish, and begin again. And of course, I have to lead us into the garden here. Every once in a while, it seems as though some plant just shows up in some garden. But I know it actually did not just show up. There was some complex pre-process that brought it to emergence, a combination of some sort of traveling mechanism, perhaps the wind, the back of the dog, or my shoes, that brought it to its place. It wasn't evoked with a magic wand. It didn't just simply appear. It emerged without me seeing it, and the way it landed there may never be fully known to me. Key, what is your story, I ask? And I ask each of you, what is your story? You didn't just show up. You all came into this church community through your unique, complex evolution. Now that you remain here, how will your own story continue to build this beloved, radically inclusive community? As we come back together in the spirit of gentleness, love, and kindness, may we learn to be better together. This is the evolution of faith development.
Threshold by Maggie Smith. You want a door you can be on both sides of at once. You want to be on both sides of here and there, now and then, together and, what did we call the life we would wish back? The old life? The before? Alone. But any open space may be a threshold, an arch of entering and leaving, crossing a field, wading through nothing but timothy grass. Imagine yourself passing from and into, passing through doorway after doorway after doorway. As Angela and I were planning the service for today, we noted that we only have one youth bridging into young adulthood, Elliot Suleiman. Year by year, the number of families, youth, and children has shrunk as more and more outside obligations claim their time on Sundays or throughout the rest of the week, leaving them only Sundays to relax or catch up on homework and work at home. The past 15 months have compounded that, with work, school, and home life colliding as we remained isolated in our homes. I then realized that in truth, we are all bridging this June. We are bridging from one uncertainty to the next as we attempt to resume our lives, more mindful of the importance of family and friends. Some of us are bridging to the restriction and uncertainty of failing health or the loss of employment. Others are bridging to new living arrangements, downsizing or expanding households. I hope we are bridging to greater mindfulness and compassion for our fellow humans and the many vulnerable non-human life forms with whom we share this planetary home. When I worked for the Ohio Meadville district of the UUA, I often drove to Columbus, Ohio for various meetings and events. Shortly after leaving I-90, having turned south toward Columbus, there is a bridge that I dreaded every single time I had to pass over it. Unlike many bridges, this one had short sidewalls, giving an excellent view of the abyss below. The bridge is high and it is long, and my heart would hammer when it came into view and long after I had driven over it. I would grip the car's steering wheel with white knuckles and marvel at people who would speed across it with left arms casually resting out the open window. What were they thinking? Bridges are funny things. They unite one thing to another. But crossing the bridge can feel like a death-defying feat. It reminds me that there are decisions we make about with whom or what we will unite, and the risks we are willing to take to make these journeys possible. A certain amount of faith is required to begin the journey, even if we've crossed a bridge 100 times.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Last week, we affirmed that we are the love people, the ones who respond with courage and compassion, and who are willing to risk educating ourselves beyond our comfort zones to be true allies to the persecuted and the marginalized. Today, we affirm that we are bridge builders, building bridges among ourselves as we sort out differences and find common ground, as well as building bridges between various faith communities as we live the intentional pluralism that is at the heart of our blended faith family. The bridges we build among ourselves are forged in our covenant, the explicit, sacred promise we make to one another and to our church community. The covenant for UU Amherst is this: together we promise to gather in compassionate community, to celebrate diversity of thought and unity of spirit, and to seek wholeness for ourselves, our children, and our world. We are a community of faith that is comprised by our aspirations for principled living. We are beginning to truly embody what it means to be a multi-generational community, and we will take what we have learned throughout the pandemic separation and use these strong strands of interconnection to weave a tapestry that is inclusive of all ages and stages of life, together. As we embrace lifespan faith development, we affirm that each one is important and has gifts for the whole community. We lit our chalice this morning with these words from Reverend Ken Jones. We light this chalice in deep respect for the mystery and holiness of life, with honor and gratitude for those who came before, with compassion and love for those who dwell among us, and with hope and faith for generations yet to come. That inclusivity and interconnectedness is the future of our faith.
Children widen the circle of our being in ways that are limitless. Every baby that's born connects us to our history, our own mothers and fathers, grandparents and unknown forebears who brought new life to this world in each successive generation. Every baby that's born links us to the future, to a world yet to come that belongs to our descendants and that we hold in trust for our posterity, whom we will never know. Each child that's born connects us to nature, to the innocence and exuberance of a world always hatching newborns, kittens and pups and lambs and babes. Each child reminds us of the kinship we share with people of other lands and races who love their young as purely and tenderly as we do. Each child connects us to the universe, to the holy mysteries of birth and death and becoming from which we all emerge. Children widen the circle of our being in ways that are limitless.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. we are one.
We close this time of worship as we extinguish our chalice with these familiar words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us now and always. Thank you for joining us in worship today. Please see the credits at the end of this service for information about the music and other worship elements. And do take a moment to visit our website, uumherst.org, and click on the giving link, or text your gift to 833-987-1968. Thank you in advance for your generosity. For members of UU Amherst watching this service on Sunday, June 13th, remember that the annual congregational meeting is today at noon. See your email for the Zoom invitation or plan to attend in person.